Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. The fluorescent lights above flickered, humming faintly like nervous energy trapped between the walls. Ariana Fields stared down at her lap, her hands twisted together, thumbs rubbing over knuckles gone white. The Brooklyn family court felt colder than she expected for July. Perhaps it was the air conditioning. Perhaps it was the moment. Calvin sat at the other end of the table, lounging in his chair with the careless posture of a man convinced the world owed him something. He had chosen his most expensive suit, sharp and navy, the kind he wore when he wanted to make a point. Even now, the cologne, his favorite, the one she had bought him last December, clung to the air, a sweet, suffocating reminder of things she could never take back. The courtroom was not empty. Along the far benches, strangers waited for their turn before the judge. A tired bailiff leaned against the door, chewing the inside of his cheek, eyes unfocused as if preserving what was left of his patience. Ariana barely noticed them. Her gaze kept wandering to Calvin's hands, perfectly manicured, tapping a slow, steady rhythm against the heavy mahogany table. Those hands had once held hers through subway rides, cold winters, and hot, endless summers in their first small apartment in Bedford-Stuyvesant. They had carried thrift store boxes, twisted jar lids, smoothed invoices, folded laundry, and once, when the power went out, lit a candle and cupped it so the flame would not falter. Now those hands felt like strangers. She remembered every ugly detail of the past month. The divorce papers had arrived in a thick manila envelope, delivered by a man she had never seen before. He did not look her in the eye. Across the street, Calvin sat in his luxury sedan with the engine running, gaze cold as glass, one hand drumming the steering wheel in that same steady beat. No warning, no argument. When she stepped outside, clutching the papers to her chest as if her ribs could keep them from sinking, he rolled down the window. "Good luck starting over without anything," he said, his voice low and nearly bored. Then he powered the window up and drove away, the exhaust fogging what little air she could find. That was the last time she had heard him speak directly to her until today. The court clerk called the case, his voice carrying through the hush. Docket number 2217, Fields versus Fields. Ariana flinched at the sound of the name she had shared for a decade. Tamika Johnson, her attorney, leaned in and squeezed her shoulder. "Breathe, Ariana," Tamika whispered. "This is not his victory lap. We fight today for everything." Judge Langston Whitaker entered, his black robe swishing as he settled behind the high bench. His face was lined, his eyes tired but shrewd. Ariana saw something in his gaze, something watchful, something seasoned by 1,000 rooms like this one. The judge took a careful look at each of them, lingering a second longer on Ariana. She felt exposed, as if he could see the years bundled in her bones. Calvin's lawyer, Mr. Jameson, rose, the definition of smug in a gray three-piece suit. "Your Honor, we are here to finalize the dissolution of marriage between my client, Calvin Fields, and the respondent, Ariana Fields. The terms are clear. There is a prenuptial agreement that assigns all current and future business holdings and properties to Mr. Fields. Mrs. Fields is entitled to a modest settlement." His words were slick, practiced, dismissive. Ariana's throat tightened. Tamika stood, composed and firm in a fitted black blazer that never seemed to wrinkle. "Your Honor, we challenge the validity and enforceability of this prenuptial agreement. We have evidence that not only did Mrs. Fields contribute significantly to the business in its formative years, but that the document in question was never properly filed with the county clerk's office. There is no witness signature and no notary stamp. We ask that the court consider the substance of the marriage, the sacrifices made, and the true origin of these assets." Calvin rolled his eyes, looking straight ahead, not at Ariana. The judge raised a hand, silencing any further exchange. "We will begin with testimony," Judge Whitaker said. "Mrs. Fields, please stand." Ariana's legs wobbled as she rose. Her heart thudded so loudly she worried the bailiff might hear it from the door. She spoke slowly at first, her voice thin, then steadier with every sentence. "When Calvin started his company, we had nothing. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, to pay rent. I built the first website from a template at our kitchen table. I handled early clients when he was traveling. I managed the basic accounting when he did not know how. And when the business finally secured its first investor, I was the one who persuaded them to take a chance on us." She looked at Calvin, whose face held stone where softness used to live. "Everything we had, we built together. The life we had, I was the foundation. I gave up a full-time role at a nonprofit to support his vision. I did that for us. She felt the words land like anchors in a room where everything else hovered. Mr. Jameson crossed his arms, his mouth tipping into a smile that did not reach his eyes. But your name is not on the limited liability company. You were never an official partner. Correct. Ariana did not flinch. That was Calvin's decision, she replied. He said it would protect us from risk. I trusted him. The judge nodded, scribbling notes in a neat, compact hand. Mr. Fields, would you like to respond? Calvin stood slowly, drawing every eye. He spoke with the ease of a man accustomed to being believed. Your Honor, Ariana helped at the beginning. Sure. But the company, those late nights, those risks, that vision belonged to me. She handled emails. She kept the house running. The business was always mine. He slid a folder across the table. The prenuptial agreement is crystal clear. Tamika interjected. Respectfully, Your Honor, this so-called prenuptial agreement is missing both a witness signature and notarization. We have documentation from the county showing it was never legally filed. The judge took the document, holding it up to the light as if the paper itself might confess. Ariana felt tension ripple through the room. Calvin sat with a flourish, then angled a glance at Ariana, a victorious smirk ghosting his lips. Under the table, his right knee bounced in a quick, nervous rhythm he could not quite control. Witnesses were called. Calvin's current chief financial officer testified, his answers clipped. Yes, Mrs. Fields was around in the early days, but she never attended board meetings. All legal and financial decisions were made by Mr. Fields. Tamika countered with old emails, dated messages, calendar invitations, and photographs. Ariana drafting outreach language, negotiating early service contracts, and attending strategy sessions before there was a conference room to hold them. The exhibit screen showed an email thread where Ariana walked an investor through revenue projections. It showed a late-night message to a vendor resolving a crisis, so the morning launch would happen smoothly. The next witness was Ariana's sister, Yvette. Her voice trembled. I watched my sister lose herself for this marriage. She gave everything to Calvin, and he took it for granted. She was there when the company was nothing but a dream and a laptop on our kitchen table. Ariana's eyes blurred, but she held back tears. The court reporter's fingers clicked the words into the record like a metronome. More evidence followed. Tamika produced bank records showing that joint accounts had paid for software subscriptions, early equipment, advertising, and travel connected to the business. Screenshots showed Ariana wearing a simple dress at a launch event with a lanyard that read Operations, and a box of business cards with both their names from the early branding stage sat in a plastic sleeve like fossils from a shared past. With each new detail, Calvin's confidence chipped away. His jaw tightened, his lips pressed thin. The afternoon wore on. Outside, the light began to shift toward blue. Inside, time looped, question, answer, exhibit, objection overruled, until Ariana's muscles ached from stillness. She forced herself to sit upright, feeling the eyes of the room waiting to see if she would break. Finally, the judge called a recess. Ariana found herself alone in a hallway cooled by indifferent air. The tile wall was cold against her shoulder blades. Tamika joined her, handing over a bottle of water. He is rattled, Tamika said, voice quiet. You did well. Just a little longer. Ariana nodded, swallowed against a hard knot in her throat, and watched a sunbeam creep across the linoleum and fade. When court resumed, the mood had shifted. Calvin looked less sure of himself. The judge's gaze lingered on him longer, weighing something invisible. Mr. Jameson called Calvin back to the stand. Mr. Fields, can you describe your financial situation at the time you married Mrs. Fields? Calvin's tone sharpened, defensive. I had some debt, but big dreams. I always knew I would make it. Ariana helped, but it was my drive that brought us here. Tamika's cross-examination did not raise her voice. It did not need to. If you were so independently successful, why did you need Ariana's income to pay rent in your first 2 years? Why did you use joint accounts for business expenses when the company struggled to stay solvent? Why is she listed as the emergency contact on your company's original paperwork, including vendor files and insurance forms? Calvin hesitated, searching for words that would not cut him on the way out. That was logistics, he said at last. She was there, but this was always my vision. The judge's voice interrupted the silence that threatened to sprawl. Let us discuss the prenuptial agreement, Mr. Fields. Do you have proof that this document was filed with the county as required by New York law? Mr. Jameson shuffled papers. We have a copy, Your Honor. The original should be with the clerk. Tamika slid a stamped letter across the table. Your Honor, this is a certified response from the county clerk's office. No record of a filing in 2014 or any subsequent year. The document is not signed by any witness. It is unnotarized. A hush fell over the room. Even the bailiff stood up straighter, as if posture might prepare him for what came next. Calvin's face drained of color. His hands stilled on the table. Judge Whitaker leaned back, steepling his fingers, his gaze sharp and unblinking. Mr. Fields, this is a serious omission. The law requires a prenuptial agreement to be properly executed, witnessed, notarized, and filed. Lacking those elements, the document carries no legal weight. Calvin tried to interrupt, but his voice cracked. Your Honor, this cannot be right. She is just. The judge lifted a hand, silencing him. Enough. The only sound was Ariana's heartbeat, hammering in her ears, and somewhere a pen rolling a short distance and stopping. She looked at Calvin, who finally met her gaze. For the first time since the papers had arrived, she saw panic where superior ease had lived. He looked like someone who had missed a step he had walked 1,000 times and finally realized there was no railing. The judge's voice carried the shape of finality. Based on the evidence presented, emails, financial documents, witness testimony, and the failure to execute and file the prenuptial agreement, the court finds in favor of Mrs. Fields. The properties, the business, and the associated holdings shall be awarded to Mrs. Fields. There will be no division of the business. Mr. Fields, you are entitled to a portion of the joint savings and one vehicle. The business, in its entirety, belongs to her. The air left the room all at once, as if a window had opened to a vacuum. Mr. Jameson fumbled for words, but the judge had already moved on, signing the final order with deliberate strokes. Calvin's face shifted, shock, disbelief, then a quiet that looked like a hollowed-out house after a storm. He started to speak, but the words stuck. Ariana held his gaze, calm and unreadable, her jaw set. She had cried for years in hidden rooms. There were no tears left for this moment. The clerk handed Judge Whitaker the last stack of paperwork. The judge signed, then looked directly at Ariana. You may be seated, Mrs. Fields. The court's decision is final. Ariana lowered herself into the chair, not trusting her legs. Her hands lay flat on the table. Her fingers were steady now, as if the muscles had finally learned a new truth. Calvin's attorney turned to him, whispering something urgent. Calvin just stared ahead, silent, unmoving, lost inside a story he believed could never be rewritten. The judge dismissed the case, and the bailiff called for order as people began to rise and file out. Ariana did not move. She felt eyes on her, the curious and the indifferent, the silent judgments and the private mercies, but she did not flinch. The weight in her chest was still there, but it had changed shape. It felt solid. It felt final. Calvin still had not moved. He was staring at nothing. His hands hung loose at the table's edge. A pen he must have dropped lay near his shoe, an ordinary object that could not help him now. There were no more speeches left, no more threats, no declarative text sent at midnight. He looked smaller than she had ever seen him. Tamika stood behind Ariana, a steady presence. No victory dance, no triumph posed for an audience, just a hand placed gently on Ariana's shoulder to anchor her in the moment. Ariana finally stood, gathered her bag, and made each movement calm and precise, the opposite of the whirlwind that had brought her here. She glanced at Calvin one last time. Their eyes met for a second that felt longer than it was. There was nothing left to say. She turned away and walked toward the door. The heavy wooden panel swung and then clicked shut behind her, sealing away the decade they had shared and everything he thought he could take. In the corridor, the air felt warmer. Ariana pressed her palm to her collarbone, felt the thrum ease a little, and followed Tamika toward the elevators. When the doors opened, they stepped in. The mirrored wall showed two women standing side by side. The attorney focused and quiet, the client unbroken and new at the edges. We will handle the filings, the transfers, and the formal notifications, Tamika said, tapping her folder. There will be paperwork, and there may be noise. But the order is clear. Ariana nodded. Thank you, she said. The words felt too small, but they were all she had, and they were true. By the time Ariana reached the street, the day had settled into that summer glaze that makes the city look like sugar over heat. She paused at the curb. Cars slid by in a slow parade. A bus sided a stop and pulled away. She stood with the papers in her bag, the judgment newly printed, and realized she was lighter than she had been in years. She walked to a small park a block away, sat on a bench, and let the roar of the city fade into a single distant sound. Memories arrived in flashes. Calvin hunched over a laptop while she roasted a chicken and answered a client's messages. Calvin pacing the living room while she balanced the budget in a notebook. Both of them huddled on a futon, holding a shared dream as if it could keep them warm. She honored each image and then let it drift. When she finally stood, the late sun had tilted west. She took the train home. A child 2 rows down laughed at a picture book. An older woman nodded off against a window. A teenager scrolled tapping rhythms into his phone. Ariana looked around at strangers going where they were going and felt a kinship that required nothing from her but breath. At her apartment, Ariana placed the court folder on the table and washed her hands, the way one does after anything important: funerals, births, verdicts. She turned on a lamp and stood in the warm light, studying the room that had held her through months of uncertainty. The plant that insisted on living, the mug collection that had become a quiet habit, the bookshelf with its spines like a choir. She breathed. She wrote for a while. She opened a blank page and wrote the date, the case number, a few lines about what was said and what was decided, then words that were not facts so much as the truth. I am still here. I am not diminished. I will not forget what I carried. I will not forget what I can set down. When she slept that night, the dreams were not grand. They were simple and steady. A key in a door. A kettle singing. The sound of footsteps that were only her own, confident on the floor. She woke before dawn and stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet as it filled with light. The next morning, she called her sister. "It is done," Ariana said. Yvette exhaled into the receiver. "You did it," she whispered, and then steadier. "You did it." Ariana could hear the smile. They made plans to meet on Saturday for pancakes and a walk along the water. Small celebrations felt right. The days that followed were filled with practicalities: signatures, transfer forms, emails to vendors and clients explaining that ownership had changed and operations would continue. Ariana wrote careful messages that did not gloat and did not apologize. She chose words the way one chooses a well-fitting suit: measured, respectful, unmistakably firm. Within the week, an employee stopped by her office door and hovered. "I just wanted to say," the woman began, adjusting the strap on her bag, "thank you for what you did in the early days. I remember you showing up with coffee and then staying to rewrite the proposal while he took the call. I remember who steadied us." Ariana nodded. "Thank you for remembering," she said, and meant it. Calvin's attorney filed a motion to reconsider. It did not move the needle. The order stood. Ariana read the filing, then put it back in the folder and returned to her tasks. She had learned not to build a house on noise. She had learned that patience is not pretending a storm is not a storm. It is knowing you can stand in it and still remain intact. On a Tuesday afternoon, Ariana found the original box of business cards in a storage closet. The top layer had both their names, hers listed as operations and strategy, his as founder. She held one card and then slid it back into its slot. Those words had been true then. New words would be true now. Later that week, she walked past the building where they had once rented their first office. One room with a door that stuck and a window that let in too much air in winter. She stood across the street and remembered painting over scuffs with a cheap roller, laughing when the color looked different after it dried. Time folded and unfolded around her as she remembered, and then she kept walking. A month after the ruling, Ariana sat across from Tamika in a quiet cafe. "How are you?" Tamika asked, not the professional question, but the human one. "Better," Ariana said. "More myself." They spoke of next steps and future plans, of the tedious parts of success that do not make headlines but build floorboards. "You held the line," Tamika said as they stood to leave. "When people said you had none." Ariana smiled. "I had a line," she said. "I had a line all along." They hugged, two Black women who had navigated a system that did not always bend toward justice. And then they stepped into the afternoon and went their separate ways. That weekend, Yvette came over with flowers and a pie. They cooked dinner and did not talk about Calvin until they had to, until a memory brushed against the present and asked to be witnessed. They honored it briefly, then returned to laughter and dishes and the ordinary confetti of life that means you are living it. Ariana learned the shape of a schedule that did not include fear. She woke, she ran, she reviewed contracts, she met with the team, she ate lunch at a table instead of a computer. She walked home, she called her sister, she read before bed. The tiny commitments of care wove a net strong enough to carry her day. Once, she saw Calvin across a wide street at rush hour. He did not see her. He moved with the restless precision of a person who could not be late and could not arrive where he was going fast enough. Ariana watched him for exactly one breath and then turned away. She had no interest in reliving a story whose last page was already written. Months passed. Ariana visited the courthouse again, not for her case, but to testify in a small business matter for a colleague who had once helped her, and Calvin, unpack a shipment in that first impossible season. She spoke clearly. When she stepped back into the hallway, she felt the same gray tile under her hand. But it was a different day and a different woman standing there. When winter came, she hung a wreath on her door and wrote holiday bonuses that reflected the truth. People had carried more than their job descriptions. She signed the cards with her name alone. She stood by the window and watched the early dusk settle like a shawl over the street. The morning she received the finalized title transfer for the business, Ariana placed the signed document on her desk and smoothed it with her palm, not because it needed smoothing, but because touch sometimes makes a thing believable. She thought of the courtroom, of the steady hum of lights, of a judge who read the law plainly, and of a woman who rediscovered her voice one sentence at a time. She did not feel triumphant in the way stories on television try to teach. She felt resolved. She felt grateful. She felt like a person who had walked through a storm and emerged soaked and upright with a clear view of the sky. That was enough. That was more than enough. Ariana kept the lanyard from the first launch in a drawer. She chose not to throw it away. It was part of the truth. When she opened the drawer and saw it among pens and paper clips, she did not feel a twist of regret anymore. She felt a steady acknowledgement. We began. We built. It changed. I am still building. On a Sunday afternoon, Ariana and Yvette sat on a bench by the water, cups of hot chocolate warming their hands. You sound like yourself again, Yvette said. This sounds like you. Ariana looked out at the river. It feels like me again, she said. Or maybe it feels like the person I was always going to become. That night, Ariana wrote another entry. She recorded the weather, the cafe conversation, the bench by the water, the way the cold had nipped but not stung. She wrote one last line and underlined it once. The door clicked shut. I did not. In the spring, Ariana spoke at a panel for entrepreneurs about accountability and structure. She did not mention the case. She did not list grievances. She spoke instead about documentation, about clarity in contracts, about the dignity of contributions that do not always fit into a title. People nodded, took notes, and thanked her afterward. She smiled and meant it. On a warm evening, she walked past a storefront with a reflection clear enough to hold her for a moment. She paused, met her own eyes, and saw a woman who had been underestimated and had survived underestimation without folding into it. A woman who had learned to call things what they were and then decide. She went home to her apartment, to the plant that had doubled its leaves, to the mug with a hairline crack that still had not leaked, to the emails that would wait until morning. She turned on a lamp and made tea. The kettle sang. She stood at the window for a long time, watching the street breathe. When she finally sat, she placed her hands flat on the table. Those same hands that had gripped the edges of a life, that had typed invoices, that had washed dishes, that had signed her name on a line that changed her future. They looked like her mother's hands at a certain angle. They looked like her own. She did not rehearse speeches to deliver to a person who had none left for her. She did not write messages she would not send. She did not check old photographs to measure herself against a past to which she did not belong anymore. She wore the present like a well-made coat. The day the last of the transfer documents cleared, Tamika sent a short note. All set. Congratulations. Ariana read it at her desk, smiled, and replied, Thank you for standing with me. She closed her laptop, stood up, and went for a walk. The sky was the exact color of possibility. The city thrummed. A child laughed. Someone called after a friend across the street. A cyclist rang a bell. Ariana turned the corner and kept going, holding nothing she did not need and everything she could carry. The door had clicked shut behind her. The rest of the building, it turned out, had many rooms. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.